When Whitney Houston's security team tried to stop her from entering Saint Barnabas Medical Center, Newark, that September afternoon in 1987, she fired them all and walked in alone, carrying a handwritten letter from a dying 9-year-old girl. The letter had arrived 3 weeks earlier at Arista Records, mixed in with thousands of fan mail pieces, written in careful, shaky handwriting on lined paper, decorated with crayon drawings of musical notes. Dear Whitney, my name is Keisha Williams, and I am 9 years old. I am in the hospital and have been here for a very long time. The doctors say I have leukemia, which makes me very tired. My mama plays your songs on her little radio, and they make me feel happy even when the medicine makes me sick. Could you please visit me? Love, Keisha. P.S. My favorite song is Greatest Love of All because it makes me think I can be strong like you. Whitney read it 3 times that first day, her fingers tracing the carefully drawn musical notes. When she showed it to Clive Davis, something extraordinary happened. The man who managed every aspect of her career found himself completely silent. She drew little angels around my name, Whitney said quietly. We need to arrange something, Clive said, wiping his eyes. This baby needs to meet you. But arranging proved complicated. Whitney's assistant spent 3 days calling Saint Barnabas Medical Center. The conversations followed the same frustrating pattern. We understand Whitney Houston would like to visit a patient, but we have protocols for celebrity visits, forms, committees, risk assessments. The earliest we could arrange would be next month. Next month felt like a lifetime when Whitney thought about Keisha waiting. But Mama, Whitney said to Sissy during Sunday dinner, this child wrote to me. She's asking for help, and they're talking about forms. Sissy Houston looked at her daughter with wisdom. Baby, sometimes you listen to what the Lord tells your heart, not what people tell your head. 3 weeks later, Whitney made a decision that would change everything. I'm going, she announced to her security team. Today, right now. Whitney, Marcus said carefully, we don't have clearance, security arrangements. The hospital hasn't approved this. Whitney stood up, her voice carrying the intensity that had driven her to sing gospel since childhood. Marcus, sometimes you do what's right, not what's approved. I'm seeing that, baby. Anyone who wants to stop me can find another job. Saint Barnabas Medical Center stood against the autumn Newark sky. Whitney walked through the main entrance wearing jeans and a sweater, carrying Keisha's letter. The receptionist looked up with routine politeness. Then recognition dawned like sunrise. Oh my Lord, are you? I'm here to visit Keisha Williams, Whitney said gently. Whispers started spreading through the waiting area. The receptionist, faced with Whitney Houston, asking to visit a sick child, made a decision that would either get her promoted or fired. She called the pediatric ward instead of administration. 10 minutes later, Whitney was walking toward the pediatric ward, following nurse Carmen Rodriguez. Keisha's been here 7 months, Carmen explained. Very sick, but very brave. What's her prognosis? Whitney asked. Carmen's step faltered. The doctors are hopeful. The pediatric ward was different. Colorful drawings covered walls. The lighting was softer, home-like. But Whitney noticed the careful quiet of a place where people tried not to make noise because excitement might be dangerous for small bodies fighting big battles. Third bed on the right, Carmen whispered, but visiting hours don't start until 4 o'clock. Let me worry about that, Whitney said. Keisha was awake, her small frame dwarfed by the hospital bed and medical equipment. IV tubing snaked to her thin arm. Her hair was fine and wispy from chemotherapy. Someone had tried to arrange it with sparkly barrettes. Whitney noticed the small pink radio on the bedside table. Next to it, Greatest Love of All lyrics, copied in careful handwriting with modifications. Where the original spoke of learning to love yourself, Keisha had added, when I get better. Keisha, Carmen said gently, you have a very special visitor. Keisha's eyes turned slowly. She blinked several times, then saw Whitney's face clearly. Her eyes went impossibly wide. Are you? She whispered. Hello, baby, Whitney said, sitting on the bed edge. I got your letter. Keisha looked at this woman who had materialized beside her bed and began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but pure, overwhelming joy. You came, she whispered. You really came. I hoped. But you're so famous, and I'm just a sick little girl. No, Whitney said firmly. You're Keisha. You write the most beautiful letters I've ever received. I listen to your music every day. When treatments hurt, or when I'm scared. Your songs make me feel like I'm not alone." Whitney felt tears. No review, award, or chart position had ever meant as much. "What's your favorite song?" Whitney asked. Keisha's face lit up. "Hard to choose. I Want to Dance with Somebody makes me think about going home. How Will I Know reminds me Mama loves me. And Greatest Love of All, I changed some words. Hope you don't mind." Whitney saw Keisha's modifications, her throat tightening. This child had taken her song about self-love and transformed it into hope and healing. "Would you like to hear a song?" Whitney asked. Keisha's eyes went wider. "Here? Is that allowed?" Before Whitney could answer, a sharp voice cut through the ward. "Excuse me, what exactly is going on here?" A tall man in a dark suit strode toward them, face red with anger. Dr. Robert Matthews had spent 15 years building his reputation as Newark's most competent pediatric administrator. He prided himself on strict protocols, ensuring nothing disrupted medical care. "Dr. Matthews," Carmen said nervously, "this is Keisha's visitor." "I can see what she is," Dr. Matthews snapped. "What I want to know is how she got here without proper authorization, without going through appropriate channels." The temperature seemed to drop. Other children watched with curious eyes. Keisha shrank back, looking small and frightened. "I'm here to visit Keisha," Whitney said calmly. "She's been expecting me." "Miss Houston, this is a children's hospital ward, not a concert venue. We have sick children requiring medical attention, not entertainment distractions." "I'm not providing entertainment. I'm visiting a friend." "A friend? You're a celebrity. She's a patient. There are protocols for these interactions, procedures that exist for good reasons." Whitney felt something cold settle. She looked at Keisha, watching with growing distress. "Keisha is 9 years old and very sick. She wrote me a letter. I came to visit her. What's problematic about that? You've circumvented proper procedures, disrupted the ward's routine, created an unauthorized situation with serious consequences. Such as other patients becoming overstimulated, media discovering your presence, parents complaining about preferential treatment, general disruption of medical care." Carmen stepped forward. Normally quiet, something about Dr. Matthews' tone brought out protective instincts. "Doctor, I think you're missing the point. The point, Nurse Rodriguez, is this hospital has rules. Celebrity visits require advanced planning, security arrangements, administrative approval. The point," Whitney said, facing Dr. Matthews directly, "is there's a little girl fighting for her life, and I'm here because she asked me to come. Everything else is bureaucracy." Dr. Matthews' face grew redder. "This is proper medical protocols and institutional responsibility. Your presence is unauthorized and potentially disruptive." "Disruptive to whom? I've been here 15 minutes. Keisha is happier than she's been in weeks. The only person disrupted is you." Dr. Matthews made the mistake that would define this encounter. "Listen, I don't care how famous you think you are. This is a serious medical facility. We don't have time for your publicity stunts." Silence followed. Whitney had dealt with hostile journalists, dismissive critics, but never a situation where authority treated a dying child's happiness as inconvenience. "Dr. Matthews," Whitney said quietly, making everyone stop and listen, "let me make something clear." She stepped closer. "I am not here for publicity. I am here for Keisha because she's 9 years old and sick and asked me to come. If you think I'm leaving because you're more concerned about protocols than making a dying child happy, you don't know me well." Dr. Matthews' mouth opened, but Whitney wasn't finished. "Furthermore, if you think your medical degree gives you the right to treat people like inconveniences, or your position makes you more important than children you're supposed to help, maybe you need different work." The confrontation drew attention throughout the ward. Nurses stopped work. Parents gathered at respectful distance. Young patients crept closer. Dr. Matthews looked around, realizing he'd made a tactical error. Instead of backing down, he doubled down. "I want you to leave, right now before I call security." That was when Keisha Williams found her voice. "No," she said, barely more than a whisper, but in sudden silence it carried like a shout. "Keisha," Dr. Matthews said, turning toward her bed, "this woman needs to leave. She can visit properly another time through right channels." "No," Keisha said louder. Tears streamed down her thin face. She came because I asked her to. You can't make her go. I'm trying to do what's best for everyone. You're being mean, Keisha said, voice cracking. She's my friend, and you're being mean to her. Dr. Matthews' face went through expressions. Anger, frustration, confusion, finally something like understanding. Whitney sat back down, taking Keisha's small hand. It's okay, baby. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at Dr. Matthews. Doctor, I'll be very quiet. I'll stay by Keisha's bed. I won't cause disruption, but I'm not leaving. Doctor, Carmen stepped forward with courage. Keisha has been here 7 months. Chemotherapy, radiation, procedures, pain, fear. She's 9 years old, braver than most adults would be. Carmen's voice shook but continued. She talks about Whitney constantly. Her music gets her through difficult treatments. When she's scared or in pain, she asks us to play Whitney's music. Whitney represents hope, joy, something beautiful in a difficult time. She looked directly at Dr. Matthews. If you make her leave because of protocols, you'll take away the one thing that's made Keisha truly happy in 7 months. What kind of medical professional does that? Complete silence. Dr. Matthews looked at Carmen, Keisha, Whitney, and the audience watching with intense interest. For a moment, he might continue asserting authority. Then something shifted. He looked at Keisha. Really looked. Perhaps for the first time, he saw a 9-year-old girl with thin hair and pale skin, and bright eyes full of tears clutching Whitney Houston's hand like a lifeline. He began, then stopped. Whitney saw the exact moment when rigid authority cracked to let humanity show through. Doctor, Whitney said quietly, I understand your concerns, but sometimes rules need to bend for something more important. Dr. Matthews was quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was much softer. 15 minutes, he said quietly. No disruption to other patients. Thank you, Keisha whispered, but Whitney wasn't ready to drop it. Doctor, I hope you'll remember this. These 9-year-old girls need more than medical treatment. They need hope, joy. They need to feel like they matter. She looked around at young faces watching. These children fight battles that would break most adults. Least we can do is make sure they know they're not fighting alone. Dr. Matthews nodded slowly. You're right. Absolutely right. What happened next, none would ever forget. Whitney looked at Keisha and smiled. Now, about that song you wanted to hear. Whitney Houston began singing a cappella in the pediatric ward that September afternoon in 1987. She started with Greatest Love of All, voice soft, then growing stronger, seeing wonder in Keisha's eyes. Other children gathered around slowly, then with growing excitement. A boy in wheelchair, twin girls holding hands, teenager with bandaged arms. Then she sang How Will I Know, with Keisha joining the chorus, small voice blending with Whitney's powerful vocals beautifully and heartbreakingly. By I Want to Dance with Somebody, nearly the entire ward had gathered. Children bedridden for weeks found strength to sit up. Those mobile came closer, some in wheelchairs, some pulling IV stands. Parents wiped tears watching sick children singing with genuine happiness. Keisha sat in her hospital bed holding Whitney's hand, singing every word, voice clear and true and full of joy. Even Dr. Matthews watched with something like wonder. When the concert ended, applause was gentle but heartfelt. Whitney hugged Keisha goodbye, promised to stay in touch, left autographs for children who wanted them. Before leaving, Whitney had one more conversation with Dr. Matthews. Doctor, I apologize if I seem disrespectful of your position. Dr. Matthews shook his head. No, Miss Houston, I should apologize. I was so focused on procedures, I nearly forgot why they exist. He looked toward the ward where children still talked excitedly. They exist to help patients. What you did today helped them more than any medicine could. Whitney extended her hand. Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for reminding me what's important. Whitney left Saint Barnabas Medical Center different than when she arrived. She'd been reminded fame meant nothing compared to bringing joy to someone who needed it. Sometimes doing right required breaking rules. Smallest gestures could have most profound impact. Keisha stayed 2 more months. Treatments continued. Battle remained difficult. But something changed. Music didn't just help her get through difficult times. It reminded her she was connected to something larger than illness. Whitney kept her promise. called Keisha weekly, sent care packages with books and music. Most importantly, sent knowledge that someone had fought for her. Dr. Matthews made policy changes after that day. Celebrity visits became easier. More importantly, he instituted music and art therapy programs for young patients. He said one singer taught him more about medicine in 30 minutes than years of medical school. Keisha survived against all odds. She recovered, grew up to become a music teacher, working with children facing difficult challenges. Never forgot when Whitney Houston came because she asked her to. Never forgot the lesson. Sometimes the most important thing is standing up for what's right, even when authority says it isn't allowed. Whitney changed music history in countless ways, but that September day in Newark, she changed something more important. She changed one little girl's life by showing her she mattered enough for someone to break rules. That's real power. Not filling stadiums or topping charts, but willingness to use influence to make someone's world brighter. Even if just for 30 minutes. Even if it means challenging authority. Even if the only audience that matters is a 9-year-old girl fighting the biggest battle of her life. When Whitney walked out of Saint Barnabas Medical Center that afternoon, she carried something new in her heart. The knowledge that her voice meant more than entertainment. It meant healing, hope, connection between human souls. Years later, when Whitney faced her own dark battles, she would remember Keisha's small hand in hers. She would remember the way music transformed a sterile hospital ward into something sacred. She would remember that sometimes breaking rules leads to the most beautiful moments. She would remember the lesson that power without compassion is meaningless, but compassion with power can literally save lives. Sometimes the most important concerts are ones no one else will ever hear, the kind that save lives with just one voice and an open heart, the kind that remind us why music exists in the first place. Not for fame, not for money, but for moments like these when a song becomes prayer, and a voice becomes hope, and love conquers fear in the most unlikely places. This is Whitney Houston's greatest legacy, not just the voice that moved millions, but the heart that saved one small girl forever, always.